All right, we begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. The big story says, why Naira scarcity persists despite Supreme Court judgment. Queues for cash resurface, POS operators hike charges, banks ration withdrawals, complain of cash limit. No need to panic, according to a CBN official. Now, quick backstory for those who don't understand what's going on. Of course, last year there was a Naira redesign policy that threw the whole nation into panic, because before a certain deadline, everyone was required to have transitioned into the new Naira note, which unfortunately didn't happen. And then the Supreme Court has ruled that both currencies should run concurrently. The initial plan at the start of the year was that it will run until the 31st of December, after which we'll transition into the new Naira notes. But the latest Supreme Court judgment is that both currencies are valid and will run concurrently in perpetuity, at least for now, until something else comes up. But unfortunately, there still is scarcity, and that's because there's a trust deficit. Nigerians went through such a rough time last year. Nobody wants to take the risk of going through a Christmas where they don't have money to buy rice or they don't have money to buy oil. They can't afford the basic things. Where if you have to buy something for as low as 200 naira, you're looking for how to do a transfer. Anyway, after suspending airport concession, federal government budgets 85 million naira for consultancy. Poor primary health care fueling maternal child deaths. According to presidency, 16 killed, 27 injured in Kaduna Abuja auto crash. We have at the top of the paper, ECOWAS reopens talks with Niger Hunter, demands short transition roadmap. 2024 budget, Works Ministry to spend 1 billion naira on grass cutting, 3.1 billion naira on vehicles. Is this a joke?
Oh, not at all. I mean,
this 1 billion naira on grass cutting, how many years are they going to cut this grass for 1 billion naira? Which grass are they cutting for 1 billion naira?
If you remember, there was, it's not the first time that we're hearing something like this. In the past, we've had the former, I think, Babachir Lawal, the former chief of staff to the president, or President Buhari back then, was also accused of a, grass cutting scandal. So I think it's nothing new that we're doing this. But the thing is, as much as the Works Ministry obviously would be able to explain better, what the grass problem is that they need to spend that much money on. But I think it's also important to know that, a lot of times when there's, these budget details and these budget figures, not all of it is released. The budget implementation is something that we don't pay a lot of attention to. So if they say they need $1 billion for grass cutting, in 2022 budget and 2023 budget, nobody knows if these funds are actually eventually released to them. But it doesn't stop the questioning as to what the relevance is for grass cutting and why you need to spend that much on grass cutting.
Anyway, we hope that we can get some explanation about that, because Nigerians are not in the place right now to see anything that looks like frivolous spending in a rough time.
Absolutely.
A rough time. A lot of us are cranky. Yesterday I bought fuel for 70,000 naira, and I haven't gotten over the shock. To think that I will one day spend 70,000 naira to buy petrol. I haven't gotten over the shock.
Yeah.
Final story, senators donate salaries to victims of Kaduna village massacre. How does that make you feel?
If for me, I think I saw this yesterday, and it's one more irrelevant thing. It might look like a nice gesture, right? But who exactly gets to benefit from 109 million? And what really is that going to do for them? And again, if they don't have a proper committee set up to investigate what happened on that day, you can continue to donate to them, and it would never bring, at least it will never be the right thing that is done. 1 million naira from a senator's salary is irrelevant, completely irrelevant to what a senator earns every year. And so if you mistakenly murder 120 people and all you've done is donate 1 million naira from your salary to them, that is, in fact, to me, that is even a heartless move, because what your role should be, including the senator that's representing that part of Kaduna State in National Assembly, your role should be to ensure that whatever was responsible for their deaths is investigated and people are prosecuted if they need to be.
So I think I agree with you in the sense that that's not all they need to do. However, I think that, yes, sometimes we criticize them for the most part. We criticize a lot of their actions. But the truth is, they didn't have to do it. They didn't have to donate the money that they did.
Then don't.
So I think that it's not a bad move that they donated money. However, what we're expecting to see, what will mean justice, is not just giving them money to sort of heal the surface wound, is to go deep into what the causes are, what the cause of that wound is. So who gave this order? What exactly happened? What was the situation, the intelligence, security situation that led to this mistake happening? Is there going to be legislation to ensure that incidents like this don't repeat themselves again? Because it always happens in Nigeria. We make noise about it, we sweep it under the carpet, and we move on.
I agree with you. I'm just saying, for me, and they didn't have to do it, so it's a good thing that they did it. It's irrelevant. That's my point. It's completely irrelevant, because if you do not do the things that you've mentioned now, set up a proper panel and investigate and ensure that the government, ensure that the government does investigate and prosecutes whoever might be responsible for that error. Somebody needs to be fired. We're not going to look at them as collateral damage. 120 people cannot just lose their lives in Nigeria by their own military, and you say, oh, they're collateral damage. Collateral damage, how? So somebody needs to, to at least take responsibility for the failure of intelligence, failure of communication, something, and then ensure that never happens again. If it's the first time it's happened in Nigeria's history, we'll say, oh, this is so shocking, it must be investigated. But this is what? This is the 5th, 6th, or 7th time in the last couple of years that has happened. And we're talking about more than 400 lives that have been lost. So, no, we're not just going to take 1 million naira from our... You know how much senators earn every month? We're not going to take 1 million naira from our salary and give you and say, okay, it's fine.
We have to difference if they donated their salary.
They shouldn't donate at all. They shouldn't donate at all. I don't care how much they are donating. It's not about the money. It's irrelevant to this conversation. You donating is even an insult again, because once again, there's a senator representing that region in Kaduna that should ensure that those people get justice. 120 lives. But we just move on like that. And what are you donating 1 million naira for? It's irrelevant, in my opinion, completely irrelevant. And it's an insult to them if you are not going to do a proper investigation and set up an independent panel that would make sure that they get some level of justice or the other.
Well, very true. So we're hoping that we can see, an update on that, and we know what next.
I've spoken extensively, extensively, and I think we did a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about the trauma that the people in northern Nigeria have dealt with in the last decade where we've been fighting insecurity. The trauma of loss that they've dealt with. Families who have lost dozens of people, mothers, brothers, sisters, fathers, uncles that have been lost to insecurity. These people would almost never recover from it. And it's insensitive and it's painful that we just move on when we hear about these things. And the people who should represent them, are even part of those who just simply move on. It would be unfair that we, in Nigeria's history, forget to always remember that 500 Shiites were murdered by the Nigerian government, and we just moved on. Well, anyway.
I think the final story here would be, after Daily Trust report, federal government goes after kidney traders. And that's, of course, because of a report that said inside Abuja's kidney market, where the rich prey on the poor, Abuja hospital accused of harvesting kidneys of 3 minors. How kidney brokers and agents operate freely in Abuja. So this is another problem we have to worry about now. People harvesting people's kidneys for sale. Illegal trading of the kidney. Anyway, that's all that we have on the Daily Trust. Let's move over to the Punch newspaper.
All right, this morning on the Punch newspapers, we can see there, diesel, Jet A1 hit market January. Petrol delayed, and that is for the Dangote refinery. There's, of course, reports that it has started functionality to some extent. And Nigerians, of course, are excited about this. I think I did see a few people saying yesterday that, they hope that it leads to some level of reduction in the cost of petrol from the current 600 naira plus that Nigerians are buying it across the country. I hope, it will reduce the cost of petrol. But I think analysts initially, months ago when this was launched, did say that it's not likely to reduce the price of petrol, from their own analysis. We should have more conversations once again to remind ourselves of the little details here and there concerning the Dangote refinery. Will this, cut down the cost that refined petrol used to get into Nigeria? Hopefully it should. Will Nigerians be able to buy petrol for less than 600 naira a litre in a couple of weeks or months since it is being refined here? That's, the expectation. Will this be affected by the global oil price? These are, questions that we need to ask. from oil and gas analysts, and they will be able to share with us what this means and what the significance of this is. But of course, it's good news, I believe, and everyone is excited about this. External reserves fall by $520 million in 5 weeks, says the CBN. Nigeria's revenue not enough to support development, says IMF. Of course. PFAs make 8 trillion naira profit from pension investments, and also federal government to spend 837 billion naira on 2,224 roads and bridges. Akeredolu, Assembly won't probe signature forgery allegation, says lawmakers. And this is what we're seeing here is once again the silence and all seeming death once again of the State House of Assembly in times when they should be the most vocal. In Nigeria, there have been narratives about how State Houses of Assembly across the country are simply rubber stamps, and they simply just fall in line with whatever the governor wants. Pretty much the same thing with local government chairmen, on the state level across the country. But this is once again, an example of how we're seeing almost the same thing play out in Ondo State, where a governor has not been in office, has not been active for health reasons. Obviously, of course, it's a natural thing for people to fall sick every now and then. He was out of the country for a couple of months, returned to the country, and then, of course, is currently in the Oyo State capital. He's the governor of Ondo State, is currently in the Oyo State capital, recovering and recuperating. And, I did say this last week, that this shows that, in the time that he has been governor, this is the second term, in the time that he has been governor, he did not fix one health facility in Ondo State enough to cater for himself, talk less of the people of Ondo State, when he is sick. And so these are things that must be looked at. And so is the State House of Assembly going to beat their chest now and say that, yes, Governor Rotimi Akeredolu is healthy, he's strong, he's capable of running the affairs of the state, even if he has not been in the state since he got back to Nigeria from his health trip, out of the country. And if they don't think that he's fit enough, should there be a point where there maybe needs to be a medical analysis of the governor to prove to the rest of the state and the House of Assembly that he's healthy enough to run the affairs of the state?
Because unfortunately, governors will not wait for him.
Of course. Are we just going to ignore it and just, accept it that it's okay for somebody? There's now allegations of his signature being forged, and people would say that there's no smoke without fire. The allegations that his signature is being forged by, persons in government maybe loyal to him to get, funds rolling in the state. And these are not allegations to be ignored.
No.
The news this morning, of course, is saying that the Assembly won't probe signature forgery allegation, and that's from the lawmakers of the State House of Assembly, I believe, in Ondo State. It's not a good look. And the people of every single state here in Lagos, in Edo State, in Ondo State, Kebbi State, everywhere, want State Houses of Assembly that represent them, that represent their own interests, that represent the interests of the electorate, who put them there. Not just people who are, similarly to fall in line with the governor, and do what the governor wants. It's pretty much the same thing with local government chairmen, but it's a long, 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 long way to go. We of course, before we get to fix these things. Also in the Guardian newspapers this morning, a few more stories before we move on. Niger, ECOWAS panel to resume talks, more sanctions loom. That's the final story, I think, on the Punch newspapers, I beg your pardon, this morning. These are the stories that we can share on the Punch. Let's move away from the Punch and see what we can find on the Guardian newspapers this morning. On
the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning, big story says, asset declaration, 6 months on, Tinubu's net worth unknown, CSO's kick. We can see here Olusegun Obasanjo's assets in 1999 and 2007 are unknown. Buhari declared less than 30 million in his bank accounts. Breakdown shows $150,000, 2 mud houses, livestock, an orchard, and a plot of land. And we have here Yar'Adua declared assets valued at 856.5 million naira, yearly income of 18.7 million naira, and his wife had 19 million naira. But yeah, they're asking about Tinubu's net worth. $7 trillion yearly funding worsening climate land crisis, report finds. And we have at the right-hand side of the paper, disclose how much oil Nigeria produces and exports, Serap tells NNPC. This is also something that the former CBN governor, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, has been asking. He's been asking for the NNPC to be made transparent, for the unbundling of the NNPC, and how the finance arm of the government needs to be able to hold the NNPC to account, because we can't say for certain how much comes into the national coffers, because it is what the NNPC reports is what they know. So this is an ongoing conversation and has been going on for years. Federal government secures 100 electric buses from Owando. Time to reorganize and adopt state policing. We had a guest on the show 2 weeks ago, I believe, 2 Mondays ago. And one of the ways in which he spoke about us combating the insecurity challenge we're facing as a country is state policing, a conversation that a number of governors will shut down, because it would seem that, like we all know, security is within the purview of the federation, of the federal government. So we don't see power amongst the governors and the state government. So for us to be able to surmount the insecurity challenges, we might need to consider state policing. But the question is whether or not the federal, and the state governments will be open to having conversations about state policing. 109 senators donate December pay to Tudumbiri drone victims. Nigeria lost over 15 multinationals in 3 years. The most recent one, of course, being P&G, that has just exited the country because of the difficulty running business in Nigeria. What that says of the country, first of all, is it's not a good look. On the other hand, some people might think about the fact that when they leave, we can then start to focus on local production. No, that's not an angle, because somebody brought up this argument last week about how local manufacturers can then jump on the lacuna that is caused by the exit.
They've always been there.
Of this, exactly, they've always been there.
It's not like they've not been local manufacturers or something.
It's not going to change anything.
It's really just quality, and does the Nigerian the reality of running business in Nigeria, that makes it hard for even international companies to cope. How does the local company then cope? But yes, there will be a void, and some of these things will always be filled somehow, some way. Now, the pharmaceutical companies, of course, are the ones that will be. I think that there will be a lot of demand on pharmaceutical companies to fill up these places where international, health companies have left, because some of these drugs, these antibiotics that we're talking about now, are too expensive for the average Nigerian. So, yeah.
Anyway, the final story: ECOWAS team negotiates with Niger to return to civil rule. These are the paper stories this morning. We'll bring more papers tomorrow, but we thank you very much for joining us. We'll go on a quick break. When we come back from the break, we have our top stories for this second hour. Stay with us.